The models that we have they're actually off-putting to the bubble that we live in. So if you think about the military terminology, right? It's great to want to run into the fire. It's great to, go hunt the enemy and stuff like that. But that's kind of how we present all of cybersecurity. And that's not really appealing to everybody out there. Data care makes it a lot more appealing to a broader number of people. And it's a good tool for those technical people to have.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership with one of the contributors to my latest book, the #1 best-selling CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, as well as from other top CISOs and cybersecurity thought leaders. Listen to previous CISO Stories episodes at securityweekly.com/CSP. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. I am your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Ron Gula, President, and Cyndi Gula, Managing Partner at Gula Tech Adventures. It's great to be here today with Ron and Cyndi Gula, and Ron and Cyndi, I love this topic. You've started this initiative called Data Cares. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I appreciate being here. Data Care came out of a creation of an idea when I got asked, how do we get more women in cybersecurity? And I realized that my 17-year-old self likely wouldn't come into cybersecurity based on how we present it. When we say cybersecurity, it's somebody else's problem. You have to be an expert. It's like carrying the entire world on your back and walking in your hoodie alone down to your basement and defend against China. And the reality is that is not what cybersecurity is. And as an industry, we've been saying what we have been doing, what. But we haven't really been telling people why we're doing it. And when I took a step back, it's about the data. And we needed to make it personal to people. Does everybody out there have data on their phone, on their computer? Do they have a sense of privacy of that data? And do they have a personal responsibility to protect that data? And I borrowed it from healthcare because previously, if you wanted to go into the medical field, it kind of sounded sterile and there wasn't a lot of ways to get in. But when they changed and transitioned to healthcare, a lot more people could see themselves in healthcare. We could take small steps. We have a personal responsibility, what we eat and wellness and taking care of ourselves that then benefited every part of the medical field. So data care plays upon that and says, you know what, let's get the public engaged, have personal responsibility, take care of our data, understand why. And when we take those little steps, then we can ask, what else can I do? How else can I protect?
So I really like this idea about, the Hollywood hoodie, right? That's the image that we portray in this field. And it's very hard. I mean, obviously as a woman, would that have ever resonated with you?
No, I mean, I'm an engineer. So from a standpoint of technology and math, science, none of that was intimidating. But the idea that I was going to work alone or it was in this area that I had to fight China or just too big for me to understand, when the reality is I'm already doing cybersecurity when I do things correctly, like when I turn on MFA, when I don't click on bad links, and I do have a password management. Those things make a big difference. And when you realize that you're already doing cybersecurity and you invite more people to understand that, then they can take bigger steps and helping in the overall security of the networks.
So Ron, you've obviously been around technical people for a long, long time. So how do you see data cares as being, appealing to that group as well?
Well, data care is a great tool to help these technical people recruit more of a diverse, group of people to our career field. And the models that we have they're actually off-putting to the bubble that we live in. So if you think about the military terminology, right? It's great to want to run into the fire. It's great to go hunt the enemy and stuff like that. But that's kind of how we present all of cybersecurity, and that's not really appealing to everybody out there. Data care makes it a lot more appealing to a broader number of people, and it's a good tool for those technical people to have. Another aspect of data care is it makes it really approachable for minorities. Now, Cyndi was speaking, about women, but we've got some experience with our grant foundation where the actual word security is associated with policing, and it's not exactly popular with certain demographics like African Americans, possibly Hispanic people who came to the country and whatnot. And we've just seen that as the word cybersecurity being associated with that. And it's a limiting factor for trying to get people who don't like me, good-looking white men, into our field. So data care is a great tool to help recruiting and get people in when you're normally dealing with ones and zeros all day.
I know I used to give some presentations around, where the chief security officer and their team should report. And one of the downsides when we were talking about the physical security department was that now, this department that's supposed to be enabling the business is now getting associated with the guns and the guards people. And so people see that as well. I don't know if it's like associating with the auditors, right? Even though we need all those different skill sets in the organization, nobody thinks, well, the auditors are coming to help me today, right? Help isn't the first word that usually comes to their mind, even though we need those auditors.
I think it's a really good point. And, audit, I think most people don't want to get audited. They're used to having their taxes done, and they probably had some sort of financial management, but that's still a fairly technical discipline. The thing Cyndi was talking about earlier, I want to double down on, is this parallel to the healthcare system, where I kind of think all the cybersecurity experts are kind of like the brain surgeons. They're kind of like the cancer research, the very, very, probably the most sophisticated types of folks in healthcare. But you don't need to know brain surgery to put a Band-Aid on. And you certainly shouldn't have to have maybe the career Chris Inglis had, becoming the first national cybersecurity director, to know how to patch a computer or why you should. So it just makes it a lot more approachable to everybody out there.
And to expand on that, even when we say healthcare does not mean just the doctor. And you have so many people writing policies. You have people that are looking at the ethical area, the who should have access to information, and when and why, and the logging of it and auditing. And it's the same thing for cybersecurity. When I say privacy, I tend to get a lot more attention from women who want to protect that privacy. There becomes a tend and defend idea that because I can defend myself, I not only want to defend myself, I want to defend my family, I want to defend my friends. And it's very much a different way of taking an idea of cybersecurity to realize it's a protection and not just defending. And the privacy is a really important piece of cybersecurity that I think we don't do a great job defining what privacy means. I don't think, I could ask a 15-year-old today, oh, do you have a sense of privacy? And they're like, oh, no, everything I do is out there. They said, oh, you want your parents to grab your phone and look at what you've been texting? And they're like, oh, no, I absolutely not. So even when we say privacy, we're not doing a good job defining what privacy actually means. And so the more we make it personal and we have people apply it to themselves, they're going to take more action to protect themselves.
I think there's a lot to that about making things personal. And I love the brain surgeon analogy here. And you say, well, when we recruit somebody, we want them to know compliance. We want them to know how the help desk runs. We want them to know all these technical things, but you don't need that to apply a Band-Aid. So, but that's where we expect them to start. And I'm thinking about my daughter here is during COVID, she was an ICU nurse, and what attracted her to that role in that in a company, and she was attracted to science. She was attracted to all the technical things, and then went into nursing after that. But she told me that one of the best things about her job was talking to the families and helping the families through their care, in working with somebody where they had a relative in the ICU unit. And so it's that connection that I think keeps us sticky in a profession, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've got some experience in that. So Cindy's on the board, and we've invested in Surefire Cybersecurity, and they are incident responders and cyber insurance brokers, and they, for the most part, live that life. We're in other portfolio companies that deal with like cyber training. Many of the nonprofits that receive grants from our foundation do completely different aspects of the cybersecurity ecosystem, but DataCare resonates with all of them because it's just, I mean, everybody in cyber lives in a bubble, and it's just a great tool to just talk to the people outside of this and get them involved.
And to your example where your daughter's a nurse, there's a reason to ask why. When I say the word nurse, in general, most people think of women being a nurse. And if you ask yourself why, what's the first toy we give to little girls? We give them dolls, and we teach them nurture, and we teach them, caring. So when we talk about data care from a point of view, or when we talk about cybersecurity specifically, a lot of people self-select out of that because they don't see themselves involved in cybersecurity because it's somebody else's problem and it's too technical and it's over their head. They can't possibly understand it. But when we say data care, it's a little easier to self-select in to understanding its small increments and diversity of thoughts and applying their knowledge and history and background in a different way than we've seen in the past, which would be beneficial for the entire organization from a standpoint of diversity. So, we are saying we're trying to increase diversity in cybersecurity, but we have to understand how we got here in that people have been self-selecting out. So now we need to invite everybody in and allow them to see themselves in a different way.
So if you're a CISO in an organization, you say, "Wow, this really sounds great. What should I do tomorrow if I want to change the way I'm operating to actually extend this message?"
Well, there's a couple things you can do. So first of all, when I think of a CISO, I think they have three different constituents, right? They have their customers, the employees of the company, and perhaps the board of that company. So when you think about customers and you think about, all the different ways a CISO has to go about protecting the customer's data, there could be compliance regulations. There could be just, due care for keeping, trade secrets and stuff like that out there, keeping things private. Talking about data care as a way to, understand that the company has a role in protecting that data. Maybe it's a organization like TikTok or Facebook. Maybe it's just a company that sells corn, but understanding that they have their role in the ecosystem, and that's in line with the National Cybersecurity Strategy, where they're trying to redistribute the responsibility for cyber is a good thing. The second thing is the employees. When you're starting to do those, user awareness, end user awareness, just trying to educate people on cybersecurity and whatnot, all that data care stuff can really help them, whether it's recruiting people to the CISO's team or just having people keep cybersecurity in mind while they're doing their job. And then lastly, the board's the hardest conversation to have, because a lot of CISOs I talk to are kind of like, look, I just bring the statistics. I might want to bring, people from our competitors, what are they doing? What's the risk in our industry? Boards really have no idea when it comes to how much risk they should be taking, and they shouldn't in cyberspace, because it's hard. So data care, again, you have that conversation is, what is the board's role in assuming risk and having a function in all those other areas I just talked about? So it works at every level. And I've seen a lot of CISOs add this to their sort of quiver of topics that they can whip out, whether they're talking to, a customer or a board member.
And it works for regulation as well, from a point of view of, instead of saying what we're doing, or let's say you must have encryption, that you start talking technical, you get over people's heads, they stop listening, and it's really hard for them to participate in the risk matrix and understanding and buy down. But if you're saying your data must be protected and from third-party authorized in state where it's where it is, your data lakes, however you have access to data or you keep and hold data, the regulation around that should be protected is going numb or mum on how. We don't say encryption, we don't say sharding, we don't say, any of these things, because we know quantum computing is coming. We know there's a whole amount of innovation and technology we haven't even thought of yet. And so we know that regulation is always slow to be able to catch up to technology. So the language has to be forward looking. And when you're talking about the why you're doing something instead of the what you're doing, it's easier to write legislation in a way that it will still be covered if we're talking about data versus the technology.
How do we respond to people that are saying, well, my data's everywhere, anywhere, anyway? You look at all the breaches that have happened, you look at the big tech companies that have all my information and they're linking it all together. How do you respond to that, with people throwing up their hands in the air and saying, there isn't much I can do?
So there's a couple ways to talk about that. And one of the ways is to kind of look at the trend of where we're going. Like everything we're doing right now, from a cybersecurity point of view, for the most part, is in response to, Chinese IP theft, Russian ransomware, and, other types of direct cyber threats at us. But if you look at where things are trending, where every tech company is going to start using AI to consume our data, it's going to become really interesting, and it's going to be this trend where we tend to fear ourselves more than we fear the enemy. So when I start talking to people about privacy, I start reminding them, it's like, look, do you use Facebook? Do you use TikTok? Do you use Google? Do you use Office 365? How did you feel about Microsoft, sort of letting the government, get hacked on their watch? How much more would it take for you to change, how you practice things online? To date, we haven't had a lot of evidence. Target got hacked. We still shop at Target. A lot of organizations we tend to give a pass up until a point, and I think that point's coming very, very soon. But again, just talking about it in terms of cybersecurity hygiene and personal privacy, it's hard to have that conversation. But when you talk about in terms of data care, what's right for you, for your family, for your corporation, and so on, there's going to be a lot of changes coming over the next year, if not decade, when it comes to all these issues.
And AI, ethics, all of these things, and I mentioned it before, these data lakes. Data's the new gold, but how long should data really last? Should something that we put out there 7 years ago, 10 years ago still be there? Should somebody still be able to hold on to it? I don't know, but we need to have those conversations. And if you have it around the data and not about the what, how, where, and or anything like that, then the conversations are easier to explain, to come down on, well, why does it matter if my information 10 years ago is still out in the ether? Well, because if somebody's not protecting that data, it could still be used against you in XYZ ways that we haven't even thought about, because AI is now going to potentially be training on that data. It might be utilizing that data, scrubbing that data, and doing things a lot quicker and differently than we've actually seen it in the past. So again, we're talking about the data, and we need to know it's out there, and how and what forward-looking and backward-looking do we need to do as a society to make sure that we do get things, quote unquote, right.
Yeah, I think I saw a university recently that had a breach, and all their records going back to the early 1980s were exposed, and I'm wondering, why was that available? I don't remember the last time I had to ask for my transcripts. It's been a while, So thinking, like you say, about the data and being intentional around the privacy of that information is so important. Do you think there's a difference between generations, between how we're looking at the privacy of our information, and how much care, personal responsibility we should be taking for that?
Absolutely. Again, this goes back to that even word privacy. When I say privacy, generations older than us, and we typically have a solid understanding of privacy, protection, rights, and that type of thing. We didn't grow up living online like today's youth is, where everything seems to be out there. Even if they're not posting on TikTok and Instagram, other people are, and therefore they just blow it up in their mind that everybody's living online, and somehow that is their privacy, not understanding that someday, maybe when you go to the doctor, and because you have a little card that you go to, a shopping center, like a grocery store, Weiss, Harris Teeter, Giant, and they see that you're not buying fruits and vegetables, that you're buying, soda and other chips and things like that. Well, maybe your insurance company will charge you more because they know your pattern of not eating well. Well, do we want that information to be out there? Maybe they'll tie that information to a TikTok challenge that you did, and show that you're not making good choices, and therefore there is an outcome that you don't like. So the idea of privacy, we need to do a better job to understand that information out there could be used against you someday. We've seen deep fakes, more people that taking videos like this and potentially making me or Ron saying things that we didn't actually say, but it's in video, and therefore it's got to be true. We need to do a better job getting people to, what's the word, interrogate, or to challenge the validity of things like that. So I do think that there's a privacy difference between the youth and people who grew up online versus those of us who didn't.
Well, we see today we make so much more public. With COVID, it accelerated this whole digital transformation trend. And you go to a ballpark today, and they don't take cash, and so many places don't take cash, and so everything is getting recorded as an electronic transaction. And then we have the posting of pictures online of people's kids, and we haven't had the time yet to see what the real impact of that is, but we have a whole generation that could be growing up online. And I saw something the other day about taking looking at a snapshot of a posting that somebody put out on TikTok, and being able to determine where that person was located by looking at the things in the background. And how often do we think of those things?
And not only do we have this generational gap, but when I went to high school, they actually taught me how to do an oil change, check the tires, do that kind of stuff. We don't teach that anymore. And similarly, when I went to high school, I learned how to build a computer and how to fix a computer and that kind of stuff. We don't teach that anymore. And if you had to actually describe with the younger generation or even older generation, how the internet really worked, and you put it on a whiteboard, there's no way you're going to tell subtle differences and, how Apple has changed, their encryption and storage policy, yet they still have vulnerabilities that are hackable. It's really hard for the older and younger generations to actually understand the technical risks of the technology that they put their lives and their data in.
Absolutely. Well, this has been great. I could talk for a long time about this. I love this idea of tying this into, caring for our information and how important that should be for each of us. And what a great way to recruit more people into this field as well. So what final advice would you give to CISOs as they're working down this path and trying to make their organization more data caring, I guess we might call it?
So a couple things. So we have a lot of information at our website, which is gula.tech, Gula Tech. They can look at our foundation page, and they can see a lot of different nonprofits that have won grants from our foundation that the system might be able to engage to help with whatever aspect of cybersecurity and data care they want. And then we've got a lot of different videos about data care and resources. One of our nonprofits actually has a pamphlet that you can download and get in person. It talks about data care in terms of being safe online for children and also senior citizens. There's a couple of resources over there.
Yeah, and we need to be a lot more inviting to the technology, and we need to really avoid the sky is falling, everything is terrible, do it now or else kind of thing, because that's just not resonating with the public. We cannot leave the public behind in this fight against the digital attacks and cybercrime. And so we need to be more inviting for little things. You don't have to boil the ocean. Just take a little bit at a time and invite people and celebrate their success when they do things correctly, and have them then share, well, you really seem to get this. How about you tell two friends? And how can I help you learn more about what other things you could do? So the constant feeding, invitation, and praising that they're making a difference.
Well, thank you very much. This has been excellent, and thanks for taking the time. I know you're very busy, and I hope more of our organizations become more data caring.
Well said, Todd. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, great. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.